Welcome to the T0 Show, episode 1, well, officially the pilot episode. With me is none other than my fellow co-owner, my fellow co-founder, and T0 head coach, Mr. Scotty Farrell. Scotty, how are you?
Good afternoon. I'm really well. It's cool to be getting this cranking. We've been talking about it for a long time, and yeah, it's good to be here. I'm excited to see what we can come up with. And
I think we wanted to discuss topics and ideas in the endurance sport area, and bring on people that are really experienced in their field, whether they're professional athletes, whether they're and physios or doctors or whoever, and to share their knowledge to help the greater audience. I guess that's the
I really want to just get in and interview interesting people and
100%.
provide really good content for all our athletes and all the people that tune in.
And not just someone who's had a great race and bring them in and talk about that race, but also just interesting people, like you said, and dig deep into their lives and work out what makes them tick, and hoping that we can grab some really good, as you say, some really good nuggets from their past and their journey, so that we can all learn. So the idea, I guess, is for us to have this audio on podcasts and Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, and have the visual, the entire package on YouTube to watch as well. So it's it'll be monthly. But you and I will be geeking out a little bit. We'll be asking everyone, all the audiences, to ask questions that they want us to answer, and then bringing a guest in each month and talking to them, which will get those nuggets out. So
yeah, definitely.
So this is the first step. This is the pilot ep. I'm not even sure whether this will be released. So if you're watching this, think yourself very privileged. So yeah, where do we start?
Do you want to maybe introduce yourself and sort of tell people a little bit about how you got into coaching, maybe?
Yeah, sure. So I was maybe 6 years in the sport, and had some reasonable, maybe longer than that, maybe 8 years in the sport, and had some reasonable success and had a lot of experience with some very high-profile coaches. I found that 2 significantly high-profile coaches that I've had, one was extremely good at the science, but a terrible people person, really struggled with those interpersonal skills, and one that was extremely good at that art of coaching and that building that relationship with the athlete, but was extremely vague when it came to science. So I felt that there was a place, a common ground or a middle ground, that I think would sort of characterize how I would coach. And then in 2011, I coached one athlete, and that's Coach Steve, which is pretty cool. And I had him for 12 months. He went from, he won't mind me saying this, but overweight to finishing his first Ironman, and that was such an amazing feeling to have that, to share that experience and be a little part of that journey for him, and that's changed his life. And that feeling surpassed anything, or as much greater feeling than I'd ever felt as an athlete. And so I fell in love with coaching from there, and that's what drew me in, and that continues to drive me to today. How about yourself?
Yeah, my coaching story probably goes back to my previous career as a teacher. I started coaching in numerous sports, from hockey to touch footy to rugby union, all the sports that I played growing up. And then eventually, as I got into triathlon, I started coaching juniors at school as well, and that led into the Wide Bay, kind of up in Harvey Bay, that scene, the Wide Bay juniors, helping out there. And then, as you know, one thing leads to another, and the more I got into the science and researching everything on nutrition, and probably more so when I got into long course triathlon was really the catalyst there. And You know, yeah, you go a little bit deeper and deeper and deeper again, and then your friends start asking you questions, and then one day, one person says, "Hey, will you coach me?" So it's yeah, that's where that all started. Probably for me, the triathlon coaching took off. Yeah, like 2011, 2012, around about the same time as my first my first kid was born too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then yeah, throw in the teaching, like you. I mean, we'll throw back to you in a minute, and you can talk about why we got into it. But yeah, threw in the teaching, and then went back to uni and studied nutrition and dietetics. And
And a great story here is I think we when you moved to the Sunshine Coast, we became friends. We met through a mutual friend, and you were running a lot. I think at that stage you were doing ultra running, or preparing.
I think when we first met, I was busy training for my second
Ironman in New
Ironman.
Zealand.
Yeah,
And so we would run like on a Tuesday night religiously, and we would be talking about, or maybe even after that, but we were talking about how cool it would be to give up, for me to give up law, and for you to work, and for us to sort of somehow amalgamate or come together and coach full time. And it's funny how that's exactly what we've been able to manage.
yeah,
It felt like when we first talked about it, it was such a pipe dream, you know. So we came together. I guess you had your stable, I had my stable, and we were sort of working like a co-op, like it was just a shared banner. We didn't really have any.
yeah. It was still an on the side gig then.
Yeah, for both, right? And it was such a shared. It was just there wasn't much much structure to it in terms of the between you and I as coaches,
Yeah,
and then I think what was it in 2015? I think we really sat down and planned it and made numbers and thought, gee, this could really work if we put our heads together and planned it out. And at that stage, I think it was the two of us, and combined, I think we had about 15 or 16 athletes. So yeah, and then in I think middle of September 16, I finished law, and you graduated from nutrition, and we started the company, and at the start of the year, and
yeah. Officially went full time.
officially went full time, which is cool. So so T0's mission statement. What do we got? It's grown a little bit, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's evolved and it will continue to evolve as we do. But essentially, our mission is, well, firstly, we're an online coaching group. So that's what we do. I mean, I can read it out. Do you want me to read it out?
Yeah, let's read it.
Yeah. So our mission statement goes a little bit like this. T0 provides professional coaching via correspondence to endurance athletes of all levels of skill and experience living anywhere in the world. Our training programs are personalized and delivered in detail by expert coaches who themselves are also very experienced athletes, and designed for you to experience your optimal potential during training, on race day, and beyond.
Yeah, I love it. And I think the biggest thing that we've always thought underlying, I think we've carried this through the whole way, is that no matter what your ability is as an athlete, your goal is equally as important as to the next athlete.
Yeah.
Like we try our best as we can not to be ego driven, to celebrate if someone does 15 hours for an Ironman versus someone who's on the podium or wins the race. I think there's a lot of coaches out there who may try to sing from that same song sheet, but I genuinely feel that we really believe in that and genuinely act that same way.
Yeah.
And that's for mine. I mean, yes, you can be anywhere in the world. The training program's incredibly detailed, and there's some incredibly good coaches that we've got on board. But I think the underlying foundation of everything is that it's not ego driven, that we put so much attention to detail and so much time into everyone's goals equally, because we genuinely feel, and I think for mine, like, that was very apparent in that, I think it was like Ironman Melbourne. I don't know what year it was. It must have been 15 or something, or 14. This is when I started it.
Damo?
Yeah, and
Must have been 15.
Yeah, and my athlete at the time, he crushed it on the top end level. And then in the same day, I had a lady who did her first Ironman. I think it was in 14 hours. And I was equally stoked with both outcomes. It wasn't as if I felt like, oh, well, she doesn't matter, I would be there waiting and getting splits from her and talking to her husband who was down the course, and it was just as exciting for me. And I think if it wasn't, then you couldn't pretend. Like, I know there are some coaches that will just go home after their star athlete has finished, despite the fact that they've got athletes out on the course. But for just internally, it's equally as exciting to get someone to achieve their goal that they set out to achieve, regardless of how fast they are.
100%. That's originally, I guess, why we came together, is because we do the personalized coaching, and because we shared that ethos of, we treat everybody the same. And I think new athletes coming in and new coaches coming in as well, it's something, maybe from the outside they may not have seen that initially, and maybe have thought something else. But then once they've either come to a camp or they've had some sort of taste of what T0 is about, they realise, oh hell, this is awesome. Like, they really do support and value each individual, and yeah, that's something pretty special, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Now, Scotty, you are what sometimes we call the director of coaching, or you're the head of the coaches, which is such an invaluable asset, I believe, to the company and the way we're going. You've spent a lot of time with honing the core values, what underpins T0 and what basically for the coaches. I think it works both ways as well. I think these core values are relevant for the athletes to have as well that come on. But can you speak a little bit about those core values, those pillars?
Yeah, for sure. So the 4 core values that we've got are growth, consistency, gratitude, and honesty. You could go through the dictionary and choose a whole bunch of good words like that, and we could keep going. But the growth one for me is super important as a company and as an individual. And that's kind of to adopt a growth mindset. And you'll hear this, and you'll probably see this throughout everything our coaches do, and hopefully filtering down to the athletes as well. But that basically means just trialing new things, and looking at obstacles as obstacles and chances to try new things and grow and develop. And yeah, just, I mean, I'm always encouraging the coaches to try new things. Like, don't have to stick to one simple method, but yeah, that's what that's all about. Growing, learning, not being scared.
Yeah.
Having a go. Consistency goes without saying, and that's from the coaches delivering, weekly programs on time, and regularly being there for the athletes. As you got to be dependable. Coaching's not something you can kind of be here 1 minute and then go away the next. It's 24/7, 52 weeks a year. So that consistency and for the athletes knowing that, you're there and you're reliable and you've got their back is super important. And that filters down into everything. It's the number one thing we talk about with training. You're not going to go anywhere if you're putting together one good week every second week. It's about showing up and getting it done week after week after week, which goes into years. And that's where the the real gains are made. Gratitude is our next one, and that's just being grateful for the opportunities that you're given. Like, you know, we choose, as coaches, we choose to be coaches. For half the cohort, it's developing into, well, it is our full-time jobs, and then for a lot of the coaches, it's a part-time thing. But to remember that, you know, you make a conscious choice to be a coach, so be grateful for it, and yeah, you know, there's no point doing anything if you're going to resent what you're doing. So gratitude's a good one to have, no matter who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
for sure.
And then honesty, it's just, that goes without saying. You know, if we encourage, you know, we use a project management tool in the background online where we communicate with all our coaches, and I'm always encouraging the coaches to voice their opinions and say things, you know, from the heart, and that's a safe place they can do that. You know, where everybody comes from different walks of life and has different experiences that shape their perspectives. So it's important for us all to realise that.
So we've got,
and then I don't know if you've got it on yours, but I've got a bonus core value, and you just talked about it, which is equality. And that's, I mean, I can't say it better than you did, but it's remembering to treat everybody the same.
Yeah, awesome.
We're not promoting like a, what do you call it, the trophy complex, the trophy.
No, sure.
You know, when schools are giving out trophies for every little thing, but we think it's important to treat everybody.
And we're all learning, right? Like we all make mistakes, and we're all trying to be better, and we're certainly not perfect, are we?
Definitely not. And that goes back to that first one. It's growth. Having a growth mindset.
Yeah. Now you talked about that online intranet or data, the project managing tool that we have. From mine, one big thing happened at the start of the year where we brought on our 12th coach, and there's often like education within the coaching ranks, and I'll ask you about how it all works for everyone to see. But one thing was amazing for me, that I think it was like some technical topic, like the intricacies of threshold, you know, running thresholds and that versus pace or something like that. And I logged in maybe like 18 hours after that first post was offered, and it was like a Reddit like thing. It was like had about 9 of the 12 coaches had voiced their like respectful opinions, and they were super respectful but incredibly thought of and considered responses to those questions. And there was like, we had, I think, one or two coaches who are studying tertiary education on professional on high performance coaching. We've got people doing all these courses through Training Peaks and the like, and people are throwing in like peer reviewed articles, and it was just amazing. And it was a moment, I think, a pinch yourself moment. I was like, man, we're creating this sort of snowball where the learning is just so deep now. So talk to me about how that came about and what it looks like in terms of the coach to coach, how we work together as coaches.
Yeah, I can't pinpoint exactly when that started. I guess as we've started to grow and take on more coaches, and the discussions that are happening behind closed doors and questions that are being asked kind of took on more of a formal sound. I'm not going to say formal because it's not that formal, but it took on a label, and then from there we kind of called it the Geek Out, and that's kind of a subfolder that we have on that tool. It's called Basecamp, and we did have some structure to it. I think the first year we tried to bring up a topic once a month or once every second month, and then that could be anything from goal planning to season planning, like, macro plans, micro plans, how you set, how you determine a lactate threshold heart rate, like what's the best method for that, what are your heart rate zones, what are your power zones, all that. So there's so much discussion around that going on. This year I kind of let it just evolve more on an organic level. I think next year we'll go back to more of a semi-structured approach and have set topics. But yeah, like you said, most times it's me putting up a question and getting things rolling. But yeah, we've got a really good team of coaches that, some have got multiple degrees and masters and, masters in physiotherapies and and then we've got the development coaches that might not necessarily have all the degrees, but they're just starting out and they're asking lots of good questions, and it's cool. We get lots of different perspectives, and I think that's a really cool thing too, is watching everybody, including myself, develop into being able to, even if you can't sometimes, at least attempt to see things from everybody else's point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of like coaching, in my view at least, there are sort of three aspects from it or to it. One is your academic background, or your academic education on coaching. One is your experience as a coach and what you've been able to do with athletes. And the third one is your own athletic experiences yourself. And whilst we have, we probably have the most coaches under one umbrella than any other company or any other business in Australia, what comes with that, the benefit of that, I think, is that, and the environment or the culture that we have that we've sort of created is that it's such an open and shared environment, so that you can, as an athlete, you might go with a development coach who might not have that experience in any of those three elements, but they can lean on all of the coaches and all of their experiences on all three pillars, whether it's being someone who's done a swim run before as an athlete or as a coach, or they've done their masters in swim run, for example. They can go, right, I've got this athlete, there's an issue here, how would I structure a macro plan, all these questions. And it's amazing to see that we've got these coaches that are so willing to help and to share and for the benefit of the group, and I think that's really unique. Not that I've been in any other coaching businesses, inside, but I think the amount of work, I've got a meeting tonight, for example, online, and it's really cool. So
Yeah,
I put a lot of that weight on your shoulders in terms of how you've created that. So it's very commendable.
Thank you.
Anyway,
I agree. It's there's a lot of one-man cowboys out there. I think that's what we call them in the industry, and I don't know. I think coaching, there was a big thing this last month about looking after the mental health of your coach, and I suppose that's one aspect of what we're doing that's pretty cool. Like all our coaches have somebody. I mean, there's the whole collective group, but they might have somebody like one of the head coaches or somebody with a bit more experience, and then that they can go to and they can trust and they can talk to and bounce questions off. And there's as every question that's asked behind with the team is always the first kind of answer is, oh, well, it depends. So everything's individual.
Yeah, for sure.
N equals 1.
That's it. Yeah. All right, so before we started filming today, we asked the collective questions, and I thought that we've been inundated both on the group chat, but also with emails as well, and I took one on the phone on the way here. But we'll get through them over the course of the year or course of the show. But we've handpicked 2. So the first one was from Mr. Tony Bryan himself, one of your athletes. And his question is, tell us what you guys think coaching will look like in 5 or 10 years. There seems to be a bunch of new technology around the corner. So what's it going to do to the way we coach and the way we train? So crystal balling, Scotty Farrell.
Yeah, great question. Thank you, TB. Before I dive into it, I should give a bit of a shout out to Mr. Tony Bryan. We are currently sitting in Osmar Homes headquarters in Maroochydore on the Sunshine Coast.
Yeah.
In his very nice foyer area, which leads into what's called the Altier.
There you go.
Super grateful for him to let us in and let us use the venue on a Sunday afternoon.
By far, the I reckon they've been in business on the Sunshine Coast for 25 years and easily the best commercial and residential building company. So yeah, very grateful.
Yeah, he's a legend. Yeah, back to the question. So what's coaching going to look like in 5 or 10 years' time? And I mean, I think, yeah, you could jump straight into the AI and machine learning kind of avenues that are happening at the moment.
So explain that for people who don't know what that is.
So you've got your simple art of coaching, which is when I started doing an Ironman, it was my coach gave me a PDF document with outline of a week and then kind of do this times 4. He wasn't sort of collecting any of my data or doing anything like that. Then you evolve into what we use, which is called Training Peaks. We program using Training Peaks. The athletes look at their calendar, see what it is they've got to do for that day in the week, and then they go out and they do that, and they use power meters, they use GPS, they use heart rate, and that data gets uploaded so we can see that, and then we can also see the feedback that they've left us or their subjective feedback, and if they're really getting into it, they can do things like check their heart rate variability and upload that. So there's lots of different things you can look at, but the very basic stuff is RPE. So that old PDF document, it was mainly, you go easy, you go moderate, or you go hard for whatever session it was. Jumping back to the artificial intelligence and machine learning platforms, and in regards to coaching, so there's systems being developed, and there's a couple that I know of now that will look at all that data as a computer system and then take it all into consideration, using all these fancy algorithms, and then be able to supposedly more accurately, and we know that machines make better decisions than humans, predict, I think, what that athlete should be doing the next day. So that's where it's heading, if you choose to go down that path. But yeah, I don't know to what extent. I know that there's platforms out there already now that you can sign up and you can pay a membership and that computer just coaches you. I don't know whether that's I would assume that that's almost on a daily basis.
Yeah, but when I was over in Boulder with the Training Peaks conference, they were sort of making it out like, well, it's like flying a plane. The pilots in the seat know how to fly it manually, but they've built the algorithms so that the computer flies at 99% of the time, and it's only when things go wrong does the human step in. But in any event, do you not think that you're going to that machine, the machine learning stuff, you're still needing to put an underlying philosophy of coaching in there? Like, just because every coach is different, which is a wonderful thing. Like, it'd be a real shame if there was one way to coach or that was the situation. But I would have thought that the machine learning is wonderful because that's essentially what we do as humans, as coaches rather.
Yeah.
We process the data and make decisions as a result of what we see, but we are making those decisions based on our own judgment of the art of coaching and going, right, well, because of this and this is where we want to go, and based on how I believe coaching should happen, it should be this. So I still think there's that there is that, always will be that element of the art of coaching that needs to happen.
100% agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think if it's truly artificial intelligence, then it's adapting and it's learning what's best for the individual. So, in a perfect world, in a perfect platform, it's going to learn that athlete inside and out. It's going to learn pretty quickly, and I'm assuming as the technology gets better, it's going to be able to say, oh, well, Rich, you're this type of person and you're going to respond better to this style of training. So it won't necessarily be, a high-intensity style coaching platform. It'll be, okay, well, I've got this person after, I don't know how many, let's say after 4 weeks, they've figured out, based on the sessions that we've given them and their responses and their HRV data and all that, this is the type and this is the style of person, this is the type of training that suits them best. But that's all good and well, but there's no, as I've kind of noted in here, there's no empathy behind.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's no
human.
The machine can fly the plane, but coaching, there's such an incredible art of understanding what drives an athlete and managing that. The psychological element is so critical and so important to high performance, or any performance, that a computer just simply can't do.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think, I agree. I think that it's coming very quickly and very fast. Oh, yeah, and very fast. Fast. It's coming fast. That I think it'll be a tool that coaches will use.
Yeah.
I don't think it's there to overtake what we do. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's exactly, I think, it's going to be very important for the coaches to get up to school with all the technology that's coming out. And, only this week I've been, I'm pretty good with all the little tools and tricks that Training Peaks, the basic Training Peaks has. But this week I've been going backwards and forwards with one of our other coaches, diving into something like WK05 and there's some pretty cool algorithms behind that, but you're driving it. And,
100%.
It has all these, eye levels and things like that you can apply to an athlete. But at the end of the day, it's, you're in control.
Yeah.
And I think platforms like that for us and for our coaches would, as our coaches' skills develop, then it'll be crucial to be using platforms like that and working with the athlete to get as much information, because not everybody wants to be hooked up to a wearable. When I say wearable, I mean those things that are measuring your heart rate and your HRV 24/7. Yeah, body temperature, everything, all day, every day. I love not having to train with stuff every now and then. So the other side of it, sorry.
There you go.
The other side of it is of coaching and technology is the online kind of what do you call them, training tools that link up to your smart trainers, like RGT cycling and the like, where you can log on to your computer, your training links up from Training Peaks, and all our coaches are pretty savvy at doing workout built sessions now, and they can just kind of drag those across into the platform that they're using and essentially go for a virtual ride. And I think some of the technology, especially for online coaches, is pretty exciting because we can then, we could jump on there and go for a virtual ride with them. And I don't think it's out there yet, but I think like virtual goggles, like I think that'd be pretty cool. Be able to chuck on a pair of virtual goggles,
And swim with them.
get on your bike.
Oh, right. Yeah, like virtual, like VR stuff.
Yeah, VR.
Yeah.
So
Not
VR,
swim goggles, but
yeah.
yeah.
Did I say swim goggles?
No, you said goggles and I just assumed. Sorry.
Yeah. Like for us, because our athletes are spread across the country and the world now, it's, to be able to say once a month or whatever, everybody's on individual programs, but to be able to say once a month, we're going for a coffee ride on Sunday, the 28th of November, and, we'll meet up at 5 a.m. at this spot on this training platform. And if everybody's got their VR goggles, you put them on and you could be drinking a coffee, riding your bike if you wanted to, but looking around, having the ability to look around and
you just want a virtual coffee, don't you? Like, you can just have a coffee,
cool.
yeah.
But I think that stuff kind of excites me too.
For sure.
As much as I love getting out on the road, the more and more our athletes are training indoors, especially during the week, for safety, for weather, for everybody leads a pretty busy life and have to get to work pretty early, so
for sure,
it's just convenient.
And the other question we've got is from Anne Brinkamp over in WA, and she says, "What are the things you consider when planning the racing season and picking races?" Yeah, so I think in the past I've had coaches who have just been yes men when it comes to races. I've just thought, oh, I'd love to do this race, and they've just said, yeah, that's fine. Whereas I'm certainly more. I feel like I'm a collaborative coach in that, in terms of training. But we've got to be really conscious of what race we want to, how that race season looks like, or what races to choose from. That comes back, I think, first to like what the goal is. Firstly, what's the objective? Are we wanting to try to qualify for Hawaii, for instance, in triathlon, or are we trying to get points? Accumulate points for UTMB for trail running, or are we just trying to do our first half Ironman? And then you work backwards from there, obviously. I know Anne, I use her for an example. She has a goal time in mind that she wants to break. And so the way that I planned that out, and I thought, all right, well, we want to pick a race that isn't notoriously slow. There are only a handful these days that are notoriously slow. But picking the actual race will depend on her life and what's logistically possible. And then once we've understood that and the athletes, I guess, restrictions or life circumstances around, like work may not allow her to go away for 4 or 8 weeks. But once you've got that race and you've looked at the course, and I think the course has to match the athlete. So if the athlete is looking for a fast time, for instance, and they're like, for me personally, I'm not a great hill climber, so I'd be looking for a flatter course. Whereas someone who's probably more of your physique, you would be fine over hills. Power to weight is no problem. So that comes into it as well. The heat and how the athlete works in the heat is important. And then you work backwards. And once you've set down that race, you definitely work backwards from there and working out the peaks and troughs of the year and how that macro plan would look like. As you've got the base build and peak and then recover, and you do that again, you probably can only do 2 or 3 big blocks in a year that you can expect significant increase in ability. And then how you plan between now to that goal race, and what we do in between in terms of races is a really important question, discussion to have. The athlete might want to race a lot, might want to have lots of carrots along the way, and that's fine. Other athletes are just too busy or just don't have the opportunity to do that, in which case you'd probably want to put not necessarily test sets, but you'd want to make sure that you're on track.
Yeah, simulation days.
Correct.
Yeah.
not at max, but certainly at race pace or the like. And because as coaches, I think, I was saying to an athlete the other day that we don't want to be surprised by an outcome. If you have a sim day or a race, you should, as coaches, we have a pretty good understanding as to how a race should unfold for that particular athlete, knowing what they've been doing. And in order to, even if it's a wonderful result, I think, at least for me, I'm like, yeah, I knew that was like, that's expected.
Yeah.
It's what gets to me, and that's why we have sim races or sim training or simulation training, is that we want to make sure that we're calibrated with the athlete, that expectation that we have is spot on with where they're at that moment. And if it's not, we've got to go back into the data, work out why we didn't expect them to do as well on the run, for example, or why they did much better on the run than we thought. Where was that in that data? And so that's important for the overall objective of the end race. But yeah, is that any other like, what else do you consider?
No, I think the only other thing that I would add in there is it depends on how far out the goal race is, but I have some, in terms of how many weeks out, I have some pretty, not strict, but some guidelines around when I like to have races with leading into a build. So say if it's a 20-week Ironman preparation or 24-week, which is about 6 months, I like to have something about 4 to 6 weeks out, and then something in about 10 to 12 weeks out. So if there's a race that they can do that's kind of a half distance, if it's an Ironman, then a half distance race or a couple of them. So if there's races that fall in line with that, and the athlete's got the budget and the time to be able to do that, well then there's no better practice than racing.
Yeah, I don't like necessarily races in that last build, whatever discipline it is.
Yeah.
Whether it's running Ironman or Ultraman, for example.
As in like the last.
Yeah,
8 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. For the last 7 or 8 weeks, it's sort of, I find it's all a bit, you're messing with the idea of recovery, and it's all.
Yeah, you got I'll put that in there as well. You got to weigh that up, like will the benefits outweigh the negatives, kind of thing of doing it.
Yeah, and that comes back to the athlete.
Yeah, that's right.
If they're seasoned,
they've been doing it for 10, 15 years, then
they're going to bounce back pretty well.
Yeah, and they're going to be able to handle things, if things don't go 100% as planned.
So I guess there's a myriad of things to consider.
Variables.
And a lot of variables. And the macro plans, as much as they're wonderful as well, and we always do them, they change as well. They're malleable.
Yeah.
And
there's not many times you get an athlete that has a perfect build and can stick to the macro plan.
Yeah.
To the T, or something out of our control always comes
Which
up.
is fine. And we just adapt.
It's life.
That's it. So thank you for those questions. And what I encourage everyone to do, either on the, if you send us an email, I think it's media@t0multisport.com, or put your comments in below the YouTube clip. We will be getting through them over the course of the shows. That wraps up the first step of the T0 show. Anything else from you, Scotty?
Nope.
All right.
I'm done.
We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did filming it. And as I said, we're open to suggestions or comments, so feel free to let us know. But thank you very much for watching or listening. Stay safe. Enjoy.
Thanks also to Cody. You can't see Cody, but he's in the background doing all the magic stuff.
Yeah, he is the man. He got this magic happening. This is far more professional than we ever expected it to be. So thank you for that, mate. We'll get him on the show at some point. He's learning how triathlon works as we go.
Yeah.
But yeah, so stay safe, enjoy the journey, and live your potential.